Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're going to master an absolutely fundamental concept in contract law. I mean, if you've ever wondered what makes an agreement truly legally binding, or how someone can legally get out of a deal that was completely unfair, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down the rules step by step so you can lock them in for good.
So imagine this. Someone completely backs you into a corner and literally forces you to sign on the dotted line. You put your name on that paper, but you absolutely 100% did not want to. Is that contract actually valid? Like, does the law say you actually have to follow through with it? Well, let's dive into this because the answer lies in a really vital legal concept called free consent.
Under the Contracts Act 1950 in Malaysia, the absolute foundation of free consent is anchored in Section 10(1) and Section 14. And listen, this isn't just dry legal jargon. This is the bedrock rule of all contracts. It basically says that for an agreement to become a legally enforceable contract, the people involved must have agreed freely and willingly. Without that free consent, the whole foundation of the agreement just crumbles.
But how exactly does consent get broken? Well, the law recognizes 5 specific illusions of choice: coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. We're going to go through these story by story.
Number 1 on our list, coercion. Section 15.
Picture this scenario in your mind. A man actively threatens another person with severe physical violence. He corners him, makes a totally terrifying threat to his safety, and demands he sign away the deed to his car. The victim, who is terrified and acting out of pure, unadulterated fear, signs the document just to escape unharmed.
Now, I'll pause right there and ask you, is this free consent? I mean, sure, the signature is technically on the paper, but did the mind go with the pen?
Of course not. In the eyes of the law, this is coercion. Defined under Section 15, it's essentially the use of force, threats, or the illegal detention of property. For your exams, you've got to anchor this to the landmark case of Kesamal versus Valiapa. Just remember this simple formula. Force creates fear, and fear breaks the contract.
And what's the legal effect here? This is a major exam focus. It results in a voidable contract under Section 19. Voidable basically means the victim holds all the cards. Because they were forced, the law gives them the power to either cancel the contract entirely, or, if they somehow really want to, keep it. The power shifts entirely into the hands of the wronged party.
Okay, moving on to number 2, undue influence. Section 16.
Here, the weapon used is entirely different. There are no threats, no violence. Instead, imagine a really touching yet highly manipulative situation. An elderly woman is entirely dependent on her caregiver. She trusts this caregiver with her life, her health, everything. Slowly, the caregiver uses that immense trust to persuade the elderly woman to transfer the ownership of her house to them. There's no shouting, it's just an overwhelming, unfair advantage taken by someone in a position to dominate her will.
This right here is undue influence under Section 16. It's a relationship of deep trust being completely weaponized. For your exams, the landmark case to remember is Rosli Daris v. Manzoor Haj Saad. Lock in these memory triggers: trust, influence, and an unfair advantage. Because this kind of subtle manipulation destroys the free will of the vulnerable person, the legal effect is severe. It triggers Section 20, making the contract voidable. So, just like with coercion, the vulnerable person or their legal representatives has the absolute right to step in and cancel this unfair agreement.
Number 3, fraud. Section 17.
So we've seen force and we've seen manipulation. Now let's look at outright malicious lies. Imagine a totally dishonest car dealer who actively hides catastrophic engine damage from a buyer. He smiles, lies right to their face, and promises the car is in pristine condition. The buyer happily purchases the car, only for the engine to literally blow up a few days later. This is fraud under Section 17. The defining case here is Kang Chui Lian v. Wang Takfong. Your memory trick? Know, lie, deceive. And just like before, this intentional lie triggers Section 19, making the contract voidable by the tricked buyer.
Pivot with me here to number 4, misrepresentation. Section 18.
Pay really close attention to this one because it sets up a critical legal showdown where students trip up all the time. Let's take almost the exact same story. A dealer sells a car with a bad engine. However, this time, the dealer honestly, truly believes the engine is in perfect condition. He tells the buyer it's great, completely believing his own words. Later on, they both discover the information was terribly wrong.
Because there was absolutely zero intention to deceive, this falls under Section 18, misrepresentation. The landmark case for this honest mistake is LAW240 ver Harbing Engineering. The memory trick here is believe, wrong, honest. Now this is a massive exam focus, so let's compare them head-to-head. On one side, fraud, intentional deception. You knew, you lied, you deceived. On the other side, misrepresentation, an honest mistake. You believed it, you were wrong, but you were honest about it. But here's the trick. Despite the completely different intentions of the sellers, both scenarios trigger the exact same effect, a voidable contract under Section 19. The buyer was still misled into signing, so the law protects them by giving them the right to cancel.
And finally, number 5, mistake, Section 21.
Get ready for a dramatic twist. Consider this wild scenario. A buyer agrees to buy a specific, famous racing horse, and the seller agrees to sell it. They sign the papers, they shake hands. But, completely unknown to both of them at that exact moment, the horse had sadly died of a sudden illness the night before. Neither party is lying, neither party is forcing the other, but they are making an agreement about something that doesn't even exist anymore. Can that contract stand?
The law says absolutely not. When both parties share a mutual lack of knowledge about an absolutely essential fact of the agreement, it falls under Section 21, mistake. The foundational principle here is governed by the landmark ruling in Cundy v. Lindsay. Both parties were totally mistaken about the core reality of the deal. Lock in this memory trick. Both parties, essential fact, void.
Which brings us to a really crucial exam tip, the legal effect. A mutual mistake of fact under Section 21 makes the contract completely void under Section 66. Not voidable, void. Remember, a voidable contract gives one person a choice. A void contract is completely dead on arrival. It never legally existed in the first place because the very foundation of the agreement was impossible.
Okay, let's bring this entire journey together into an ultimate master recap matrix. Think of this as mapping out all 5 exceptions we just conquered: coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. It aligns every single concept with its exact section number, the required case law you need to memorize, and crucially, whether the effect is voidable or entirely void. If you want to ace this topic, getting this structure down is pure gold. Think of this as your mental snapshot for the exam. Notice how sections 15, 17, and 18 all feed directly into section 19, making things voidable. Notice how undue influence under 16 has its own special section 20, but is also voidable. And see how mistake stands completely alone at the bottom as a void contract under section 66. It perfectly structures everything we just learned into one clean mental image. So we've explored the stories, we've broken down the sections, and we've mapped out the critical case laws. Now the final test is completely up to you. If you can explain these 5 exceptions out loud to a friend without looking at your notes, you are absolutely ready for your contract law exam. Practice these scenarios in your head and remember the stories, not just the words. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep building that incredible legal knowledge.